Jewish Voice for Peace and If Not Now and Jews for Racial and Economic Justice have seen a huge influx of people joining, and joining the organizations in particular. And I wonder if you could talk about how, especially on a local level, you are integrating so many new people, and how you are doing so in a way that both addresses the urgency of now, but also builds for the long run such that so that you're helping bend the arc of history towards justice.
We've been blessed in many ways with that influx, many of whom are this next generation of activists who have been willing to come join graybeards like myself in really a quest for peace and justice. We're working at several levels. One, finding the way to move people into action quickly. And JVP, If Not Now, and its allies in Chicago have been part of a very multifaceted organizing action effort that have ranged from very traditional direct action, nonviolent, non-illegal, through the closing down of bridges, streets, taking over of the major train station in Chicago, all designed to take the attention of Chicago's community and say, ceasefire now. One day longer, too long. We've also been organizing very heavily to move people into action who want to do other things. And so we're now focused on supporting some very brave city council members who have, coming up in 2 weeks, a little less than that, on the 24th, the ability to vote on a ceasefire resolution that will make Chicago the largest city in the United States to aggressively come out and say, ceasefire now, not one day more. In the back of that, in the back of all of that action, has been really very basic organizing principles. A number of us have been spending, and you could talk to my wife about this, more time than we would have counted on in one-on-one conversations. And so I'm on the phone, my colleagues are on the phone or on Zoom or in coffee shops multiple times a day, multiple times a week, taking the time to learn who people are and what motivates them, and where they want to connect, and finding out the ways that folks who are technological whizzes can help us increase our media presence, finding ways people who want to write can do that, finding out people who want to learn more about the issues, how we help them do that. This is very basic block and tackling organizing, and that's not changed. We still need to do it. We're still doing it. And I guess it's unfortunate that the tragedy of October 7th and what has followed has moved people, but it's also fortunate. They're now in the game in a way they were not before. Thank you.
Reverend Abu-Akel. So I've heard you talk about when you were raised in 1948 Palestine, your teacher telling you for the first time about Dr. King being in jail on that particular day and what that was about, and why he was in jail, and the struggle for civil rights and black liberation here in the US, and how that was transformative for you in terms of your faith. And you know, then you came to the US in the 1960s, and since then you've been a part of more initiatives and projects that I can name, and in the Presbyterian Church have raised up the issue of Palestinian rights way before people wanted to allow it to be uttered. What was that like back in those days? I imagine one of the very few, if not only, Palestinian American.
I like to share my personal story because I'm the only one that can share with you the first Nakba of 1948. My parents are Palestinian, Christian, Arab farmers. And the only thing I remember about the 1948 Nakba is basically going with my father, 5 sisters and 2 brothers, leaving home. And as a 4-year-old kid, you look for who? For mother. So every time I see the children in Gaza, I see myself running around dad, 5 sisters and 2 brothers. And suddenly I looked, our roof is flat, and my mother was waving her hand. So we went up to the mountain to the east to a Druze village called Yirka. And we were put in a makeshift Palestinian refugee camp. It's just like scouts. And after 3 months, we came back. And my mother was alive and basically always hunted me. So as a teenager, I wanted to ask my mother why you did not come with us. And I discovered, she said to Dad, you take the children, you can protect them. I'm going to stay here. This is our home, this is our land, this is our church. They need to kill me at home. And so every time I think about my mother, I want to salute the Palestinian women, the Palestinian sisters, and the backbone of the Palestinian sumud, or steadfastness, are the women, okay? And we always, like in America, chauvinistic, the man. Well, without the women, nothing will happen, survivor. And so as I think about that experience, right now we are really experiencing the second Nakba. Even though the Nakba was continuous, look what happened. After 1948, from 1948 to 66, I couldn't leave my village. I needed to go to the Israeli military governor and get a permit to go to Akka, only 5 miles. And if I'm found in Akka without a permit, I go to court. And if I don't have money, I go to prison, okay? So I experienced the Israeli apartheid system. Even though I'm a citizen, in the mind of the policymakers, I'm an occupied and they control my movement. So basically, they created immediately 65 laws to control our lives as Palestinian citizen of the State of Israel, okay? So they control our education, our movement, everything. So everything they learned on us from 48 to 66, after 1970, 67, they start to practice on Gaza and the West Bank. And of course, in 2017, they created a nation-state law. That means the law says this land of Palestine belongs only to the Jewish people. So I just want to say one more thing. As I think about my parents, the church that I grew in was an Orthodox Christian church. And the building is about 800 years old. It was the 3rd building. So yeah, I think the first building was about 800, the second building 1,800. And so I never forget, since this is the Martin Luther King weekend, Mrs. King invited me to do a prayer in January 2002. And the program said, Reverend Fahed Abu-Akel, Presbyterian minister at First Presbyterian Church of Atlanta. And I began to pray. God Almighty, God of nonviolence, I come to you in prayer in the name of Jesus, the Holy One that Martin Luther King served. And while I'm praying, the smartest radio in the nation, public radio, Mr. Wolf in the balcony in that small Ebenezer Baptist church introduced me to the nation as a Muslim clergyman. That journalist had 3 journalistic evidences: Reverend, Presbyterian, and praying in the name of Jesus. No Muslim, no Jew can do that, only the Christian. With all of that went by the wayside. My last name is Abu-Akel. Abu-Akel is Arabic. Arabic is a Muslim. God bless America. So he introduced me as a Muslim imam. So my wife's sister in Tampa, she was driving. So she called my wife, Mary, and said, did Fahed switch religion? So anytime we think about Israel, we think about Jews. Anytime we think about Arabs, we think about a Muslim. And good old Americans think Jesus was born in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and he grew in Texas, Nazareth. Good.
Thank you, Fahed. So, Reverend Jackson, at the 1984 Democratic Convention gave a speech that is just, if you haven't listened to it, you should look it up, read it, listen to it. Incredible. And he speaks about Mohammed and Jesus, and he said, we are bound by Dr. Martin Luther King and Rabbi Abraham Heschel crying out from their graves for us to reach common ground. So, Professor Dabeet, as leading a national Palestinian American organization, how do you both come together within your organization for unity around differences, right? And there is this misconception, of course, that all Palestinians must be Muslim. So how do you both do that and help build unity across a wide variety of faiths and secular folks?
First of all, I would like to start by saying that I started my day today with a great moment, a moment of shaking hands of a great man, Reverend Jesse Jackson. Thank you for everything you do. We really appreciate that. After that, I saw one of my best friends, Reverend Fahed Abu-Akel, and we started to chat a little bit. Then we saw our great friend, Dr. James Zorbi, and I felt like, wow, this is really great to be here, great to be among all of you and listen to each one of you, and also to get a chance as a president of a national organization, which is the U.S. Palestinian Council, to talk to you about, even though our job is on the national level, but I encourage each one of my board members to do some local work, because all our works at the end goes back to local communities, and that's where we usually start our work and then go into the national level. But before also I continue to talk about what we do, I would like to start with the late Congressman John Lewis once said, when you see something that is not right, not fair, or not just, you must speak up. I know all of us here are speaking up, but my challenge to all of you, make sure you talk to your neighbors, make sure you talk to your family, make sure you talk to your friends, and ask them to speak up. Ask them to speak up, because nothing can be more powerful than sharing our narrative, the narratives of our brothers and sisters in Gaza and in Palestine, and what they go through every day and every minute and every second under, again, the Israeli occupation and under the bombing of their homes and hospitals and schools and so on. I'm not going to talk about the national level. I want to concentrate a little bit on the local level. On the local level, obviously, I live in Iowa. Some of you might say, wow, how can you live in Iowa and be leading a national organization? You know, with technology, you can do anything possible, but I do travel a lot to DC area. But on the local level, we have been organizing demonstrations almost every day in Iowa City and different places in Des Moines and different places in Iowa in support of our brothers and sisters in Gaza and in Palestine. But also in Iowa City, and I want to try to give you the right date, on January 3rd, Iowa City passed a resolution calling for a ceasefire. You know, in a, what I call, in a white state, if I may use this term here, it's not easy to pass a resolution like that. Even though it came to 4-3, still we passed that resolution. The other thing is I work heavily with Dayton, Ohio community. And part of the reason is because exactly 2 years ago yesterday, I helped them sign a sister city relationship with the city of Salfit in Palestine. So I work a lot with them. I work with their city council, the mayor, and so on. And I can tell you that we also work on a ceasefire resolution, and Dayton City Commission approved that on December 20th. So what I'm trying to say, our work is extremely important when we speak up. So that is why it's important for each one of us to talk to everyone we know and let them, again, be vocal about sharing the narrative, because in most cases, we don't get the narrative from the US main media. Another thing that we did, as a matter of fact, and I take the pride of doing something like that as a white state, as I said, or living in a white state, which is called Iowa. We were the second state in the United States after California to establish an Arab American caucus for the Democratic Party in the state of Iowa. It took us 3 years, full years, to work and get that caucus moving. So I always say, you know, Palestinians are well known for their strong determinations. So with the strong determinations, there is nothing called impossible. So everything becomes possible because all of us, when we get together like here in today, yes, we can all say, yes, we can. Yes, we can achieve the unachievable. Yes, we can help our brothers and sisters in Palestine, regardless of how many years, regardless of how many months, regardless of how many days. We all have to work. If we have that determination, believe it or not, we will all succeed and we will all achieve the ultimate goal, which is the ceasefire. Thank you all.
So we can keep on time. We're going to have time for one more question, and I'm hoping to get kind of into some specifics like how to. So if you can share some personal experience or advice. Marty, you spoke a little bit about you're working on the City Council ceasefire resolution. So if you could give some real details of how you either formed that coalition, brought it to be, and where folks can learn more about it to duplicate it in their area.
The effort on the goes back to, and I have to give credit, there were several very brave members of the Chicago City Council, led by Rosanna Sanchez, who were willing to put forward a resolution and stayed with it in the face of an incredible amount of pressure, accusations of anti-Semitism. The coalition has spanned relationships that exist from the Jewish community to the Palestinian, Muslim community, to Christian groups, to almost every aspect of members of labor. And we are now working hard. And I really want to actually demonstrate what you can do by turning to everybody in this room and on our feed. We need folks who are willing to take the one simple step of calling an alderman. If you live in Chicago, call your alderman and tell them, come the 24th, a week from this coming Wednesday, vote yes. No less than that, a simple phone call. That's block and tackling. If you have a little more energy, pick up a phone. When you pick up the phone and make that call, ask, we would like a time to meet with you. Each alderman has an office in your ward. It's going to be reasonably accessible to where you live, and ask for a time that you can come and visit them. And if they won't give you a time, just find out when they're open and walk in and tell their staff. You're there because you're a constituent and you want them to vote yes. The effort to organize this, to get to the point that we now have 19 co-sponsors of that resolution, from where we began 5, to 23 committed yes votes. We need 26. That all came from people like you being willing to make that one step. We've had folks, while this has been going on yesterday and today here, there's been a crew of folks. I've been splitting attention between my cell phone and that team of folks who have been making calls, reaching out to others to make calls and make visits. So there isn't any magic in this. There's nothing that will make this easier or harder than your willingness to say, I care about an issue. I am willing to call the people who can make a decision. And we think passing this in Chicago on the 24th has national implications. As a city that is the 3rd or 4th largest in the country, depending on you count, a city that has a very strong mainstream Jewish community, which is putting every bit of its political muscle to defeat this, which is willing to call the sponsoring aldermen anti-Semitic because they want a ceasefire, willing to call my organization, made up primarily of Jewish advocates, anti-Semitic. We have a big hill still to climb. So it's all simple if you're willing to take that step. And I really challenge everyone here, as soon as this convention ends, find out, figure out your alderman. There is a city clerk site which can give you, based on your address, who your alderman is, what their phone number is. Find that out. Make that phone call Tuesday morning, because their offices are going to be closed on Monday for the Martin Luther King holiday. Make that call. And then if you want to find out more, Jewish Voice for Chicago, Jewish Voice for Peace Chicago's website has a way for you to touch base with my organization, and we are very happy to then help you connect to this effort to learn more about how you can show up on the 24th, how you can be part of a large group of people on that day who are going to be present to say, vote for ceasefire now. That's top of my organizing list. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to make that case.
Reverend Fahed, you've been working in the faith community for decades. If you could give advice to faith leaders here in person and online on how to raise the Palestinian issue, both in this urgent moment and in the long run.
And first, since this is the Martin Luther King weekend, I want to say when I was in the 9th grade, the history teacher came to our class and said, I'm not going to teach you the class. I want to tell you about this Baptist minister in Atlanta, Georgia. And he told us his story. So I would say my mother was my spiritual nurturer, then the Scottish Presbyterian, but Martin Luther King, 10,000 miles away, made sense out of the gospel for me in Galilee more than the Orthodox priest there. okay? So we are local, but at the same time, global. And I never forget, after finishing 4 years in Florida, I came only for 1 semester to Trinity Evangelical Divinity School with a full scholarship and also to teach Arabic and Hebrew. And Jim Wallace brought me to the Rainbow Coalition way back in the dark ages, 70 in that year. And so as I think about, number one, we need to build relationship. Number two, the interfaith that's been going on all over America is more, hello, how are you, be gentle with each other. Huh? And the group in Atlanta was really saying, anytime you bring the issue of Palestine or justice, we are not come to this group. So I left them a long time ago. So recently, because of October 7, we started something called Multi-Faith Coalition. Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Sikh, from everybody, saying we need to focus on the issue of justice for Palestine and focus on the basically ceasefire for Gaza. So we had a press conference, had an excellent press conference covered by CNN and others. And then we wanted to do a march. And a young black preacher in that meeting said, these people are being buried without any appropriate prayer or any, they are under the rubble. We need to do a funeral for the people of Gaza and do the march. And I tell you, we were expected maybe 100, 200. We almost 1,000 people. Huh? And I want to salute the young people of America. These are the people don't have any baggage in there. They're focusing on justice. The old-timers, we want to be sensitive. The young people, that's the one we need to focus on. So we did the funeral, a prayer in Hebrew, and a prayer for Islam, and a prayer for the Christians, and we did the march. And now we discovered that 1,000 black preachers had an advertisement in the New York Times. And one of them is Reverend Jamal Bryant. So we got in touch with him. He said, of course, you're going to come to my church. Imagine, on Christmas morning at 10 o'clock, we're going to read the scripture in Arabic and in English, and basically, and we need to hear your story about Gaza and the call for ceasefire. And when I went there, he had the Palestinian flag all over the place. He had the choir of 80 people with the hatta, and the young children choir. So I want to salute Reverend Bryant. Out of that, I want to say, really, I'm grateful to CARE and American Muslim for Palestine that were behind that for us to work in a multi-relationship. So now we had a good gift that we going to do an advertisement. Today, Saturday, we have a letter that says, Black interfaith faith people demand ceasefire. And then we have 153 people that sign on, and I'd like for you to give them in Atlanta a big hand for that advertisement saying we demand ceasefire. The last thing I wanted to say, I think, let's be clear that we are dealing with a settler colonial reality. For some of us need to realize, if you are colonial, you go to India, suck the resources, and go home. But if you are settler colonial, you want the land and the resources and get rid of the population. So the Zionism, when it came to Palestine, according Ellen Pappy, they destroy 530 villages and exile 1 million people out. So my folks that stayed to become citizen of the state of Israel, listen to that, 155,000. And in 75 years, we are 2 million citizens of the state of Israel. And in Gaza, 2 million coming from 60 villages to be refugees to Gaza. And in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, we have 2 billion 8. So for the first time, after 75 years, between the river and the sea, we have 7 million Israeli Jews and 7 million Palestinian, Arab, Muslim, and Christians. Listen to that. Right now, Israel mentality, we're going to use power and eradicate the Palestinians. You cannot understand what is happening in Gaza until you understand a settler colonial mentality. Huh? We in the United States, a settler colonial, we eliminated the Native American. We enslaved the black people, right? And now we have a constitution, and in fact we don't want the ex-president Trump said we don't need the constitution, okay? So the issue is this: you cannot understand what Israel is doing in Gaza without understanding the settler colonialism, okay? That means there's a big hole. My Jewish brother and sister who are walking to a synagogue next to Emory University with their children, most beautiful, walking to the synagogue. You cannot be a settler in the West Bank with having 2 guns on the right and 2 guns on the left. You cannot understand 5 soldiers running after a 10-year-old kid without understanding a settler colonialism. So our struggle in this conference, it needs to be not a quick fix. We're going to think about 25, 50, and longer. Justice is a journey, and we need really to focus, how do we go after a win-win solution? And we need to start. I am with 3-4 organizations in Atlanta called Joining Hands for Justice, started by the Presbytery of Greater Atlanta. We want the Presbyterian to know. And then I am with the Christian Alliance for Peace, Palestinian Christian Alliance for Peace. We are Palestinian American Christians. We want to go to every church in America through Zoom or a visit. And of course, most of you know something called FASNA, Friends of Sabil. Good.
Thank you both for being here, and wonderful.